So I first saw Jordan Maxwell when I was watching William Cooper videos. So you're watching a video on YouTube, and then on the right are recommended videos for you to watch next. And Jordan Maxwell was always in the top video recommendation. So he started coming up a lot as a recommended video around 2008. That was when I first saw Jordan Maxwell. He has 5 or 6 lectures on the internet, and I've listened to most of them. He always says the same things. When you carefully study what this guy is telling you, it's like listening to somebody with schizophrenia. I think Jordan Maxwell is a paranoid schizophrenic. There's basically 2 subjects to his different lectures. The first subject is something like a rambling talk, where there are a series of points made, and all these points are very unrelated, and it becomes almost like a schizophrenic ramble. The second part of his talk has to do with astro-theology. That will take a little bit more explanation, so I will get to that in a little while. So for now, I've taken notes on his hour or hour and a half rambling lecture entitled Astro-theology, the root of all religions. So let me read the notes I took. It should not take me longer than 3 or 4 minutes, and I will save you a lot of time when it comes to Jordan Maxwell. So I quote Jordan Maxwell: "A lot of problems are happening in the world. A lot of people are crying out to God for God's help, but the divine force in the universe is not listening. Jews were marched into the concentration camp, and they prayed for God's help, but none was given. Christians pray for God's help, but none is given, because we are not in tune with the universal God force. We are not in tune with the truth. We are coming to a point when we are going to be in serious trouble, because when God moves, people die. The truth is that the people who put this system together have been in power for thousands of years. They know the truth, but you do not. The Bible is written in code, and it tells us that we are going into a very dark time. All the bloodthirsty generals from every military, their plans can be traced back to the planet Saturn. The 6-pointed Star of David is the star of Saturn, because Jews worship the planet Saturn. Saturn is El. Elders worship El. By becoming elected, like the elite, and they move up like in an elevator. It's a disgrace to put a modern day US flag on your car, and you have no idea that this is not the original American flag. The flag has gone through many changes, and you are a fool. Black is the color of Saturn, so priests and rabbis wear black. Green is the color of Venus, so Muslim flags are often green, and that is another part of the cult of Saturn. Muslims secretly worship Venus. Nazis were Saturn worshippers. Nazi women wear earrings, which meant they were listening to the god Saturn. Kings wore crowns, which meant they worshipped Saturn too. Darth Vader wears black and a Nazi-styled helmet and speaks through a Masonic triangle mouthpiece. Ancient Palestine found its way into Eastern and then Northern Europe and formed the basis to what became known as the Celtic Druidic system. Magic wands were made out of wood from a holly tree, and they are still working their magic on us today in Hollywood, California, through all their movies. The Vatican dominated Europe, and Europe dominated the world. Why do you go to court? To play a game. You throw a ball back and forth, and the judge wears black for Saturn. That's why the judge sits on the bench, because bench is a Latin word for bank, and the judge rules for the bank as you play ball with each other in court. The word church goes back to the Scottish word kirk, which goes back to the Greek word Circe. Mother Circe is a mythological character who would hypnotize people who were invited into her home. These people would then think they are animals, and Mother Circe would eat them. Nazis were helped by the Vatican to escape into Paraguay and other South American countries. And then you have guys like Werner von Braun, who developed rockets that help get us to the moon. When these rockets take off from Florida, people applaud. And I think to myself, what are you applauding for? You're not going anywhere. Those guys are going somewhere, but you're not. And you're never going to go anywhere. Just think about how much poisonous gas comes out of those rockets and pollutes our atmosphere. It's a disgrace. So those are the main points from the first hour of his lecture entitled Astro-theology, the root of all religions. So there's no additional information. He says these things and he does not explain any more than that. They're just kind of a random group of topics that have to do with government and religious conspiracy. It's like they are a series of trigger sentences that will trigger people listening to thinking that they are hearing intense and sophisticated information. But the truth is that this is just schizophrenic ramblings. And Jordan Maxwell has 4 or 5 lectures on YouTube that are just like this. So this is who YouTube endorses. This is the guy that would come up over and over again for years on end as a recommended video for you to watch on YouTube. And when you start listening to Jordan Maxwell, ever so often he will say something that captures your attention and you think you're going to hear more about it. He's just getting warmed up, and then he just never gets back around to explaining any more of this. So after taking notes, I can see what he's doing. This guy has designed lectures that are designed to capture your attention, but never really teach you anything. And the truth is that Jordan Maxwell is a paranoid schizophrenic. He's a government-sponsored paranoid schizophrenic that's highly recommended by YouTube. If anyone gets the bright idea to start looking up government conspiracies, political conspiracies, alternative history, secret societies, New World Order, the Illuminati, instead of listening to someone like William Cooper, YouTube wants you to listen to someone like Jordan Maxwell, because you are not going to learn anything from Jordan Maxwell. So Jordan Maxwell will come across as being a well-spoken individual. It sounds as if he has taken lessons on giving speeches. He presents himself very well. But after that, what he's going to tell you is not going to make a whole lot of sense if you seriously analyze it. So Jordan Maxwell most likely called up William Cooper. William Cooper had a radio show called The Hour of the Time, and I would guess that Jordan Maxwell called him up or contacted him somehow, because Jordan Maxwell appeared on The Hour of the Time on June 17th, 1993. It says on this video. So Jordan Maxwell introduced himself as somebody that knows occult symbols. And these occult symbols would be all over religion, the media, and corporations. So this is what he told William Cooper on the Hour of the Time radio show on June 17th of 1993. So I quote Jordan Maxwell, "A merger of church and state is symbolized with a long black robe. Priests wear long black robes, and so do judges in a courtroom, and so do you when you graduate college." So what does that all mean? It all goes back to the cult of Saturnalia, worshipped by the Semites. They all wore black robes too. There are very few mistakes in politics. Everything is planned ahead, like the war on drugs. They do not stop crime. They do not stop drugs, because drugs and crime are purposely allowed and even promoted. And why is this? It's from the ancient world. Order out of chaos. So when there is enough chaos in the world, the people will run to the government for control or order. Hitler was elected to power because all of the chaos that he was causing. So he was the only person that could put the chaos down. Nazis, communists, and fascists all use one symbol in common, and that is the symbol of the sun. Baal is God's son, the light of the world, and Baal has 12 helpers. The sun is symbolized by the sun's rays, like in the Statue of Liberty. So that is the real meaning for the crown of thorns stuck on Jesus Christ's head. Just like when they say in the Bible that Jesus was raised from the dead, the origin of that is through an old Egyptian sundial. The Egyptians noticed that on December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, the sundial did not change its degree. So nothing was moving for 3 days. And anything that is not moving must have been dead. So that is why they say that Jesus is dead and is in his tomb for 3 days. Then on December the 25th, when the degree on the sundial began moving and changing again, they say that God's Son, and that's S-U-N, is born. So at that point, William Cooper stops Jordan Maxwell and says, of course you know that December 25th is probably not the actual birthday of Christ. And Jordan Maxwell says, no, it's the birthday of the sun. So I quote Jordan Maxwell, "When you go to replace a temple, you must first destroy the original temple, because you cannot build something on an existing religious order. You must destroy the first one first." Like in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, you cannot understand the Last Crusade until you understand the First Crusade. And then Steven Spielberg and George Lucas had Star Wars, and you get The Empire Strikes Back. And that is like New York being called the Empire State. In ancient Freemasonry, they have a little pointy-eared monster guy that represented the intermediary between man and God, and his name was Yoda. So if you look into the old Masonic literature, you will see little pointy-eared guys that look like Yoda, because Yoda is a Jedi Knight, and Jedi Knight is connected to the old order of the Knights Templar. Star Wars meant a war in heaven, and the sun walks across the sky, which is why they called him Luke Skywalker. Then there is 1,000 points of light and 1,000 years of reign of the Nazi Empire. Black graduation robes go back to the worship of Saturn, and that is why people wear earrings, and that is why a king wears a crown, because it all means that they worship the planet Saturn. So those were his main points on William Cooper's show, The Hour of the Time. So when people see a man like Jordan Maxwell, when he first presents himself, he seems well-spoken and very knowledgeable about some material, and he acts like he's summarizing. He's going to briefly summarize some key points that he's going to fully delve into during his presentation. But as the hours go on, he never does that. It's just one random schizophrenic point after the next, and none of it has any real meaning. So as he goes on, you start to think that he's just an eccentric that is just trying to do his best to explain a very sophisticated and complex religious and political conspiracy that has gone back thousands of years. But the truth is that Jordan Maxwell is most likely a high-ranking member of the Freemasons, and he is highly involved in everything that I am exposing concerning government and religious conspiracies, mind control, and the criminal and occult acts of these secret societies that have taken over the government, the military, the media, and all corporations. He is part of that. That is why he is chosen by them to have several lectures on YouTube that is highly endorsed by YouTube and Google, because he is involved and directing these activities. He is one guy that the military, that the Freemasons, that the power structure would not hesitate to trust to be thrust into the public eye as an expert on the occult, because they know that Jordan will never truly inform the public about what is going on. He will never truly teach anybody. And the only thing that he does try to convince you of is something called Astro-theology. And during Astro-theology, there is always one guy that is always under attack by Jordan Maxwell. And he goes out of his way to try to convince you that a man like Jesus Christ never existed. And Jesus Christ is nothing more than a metaphor for the sun in the sky. And all these stories that you hear about Jesus Christ are metaphors for the zodiac and celestial movements in the sky. So he is the right guy to convince you of that, because he's paranoid schizophrenic. If you have a guy watching Star Wars and he sees that Darth Vader has like a robot face, to think that that has hidden meanings suggests paranoid schizophrenia, where someone is always looking for these subliminal meanings in everything, to the point that it becomes a sickness and they cannot focus on any important point. Their mind starts to wander and they start making associations with things that do not make a whole lot of sense. So someone like Jordan Maxwell was given the New Testament and say, go ahead and read the New Testament and try to find the comparisons. Try to find some similarities of some of these activities of Jesus Christ that remind you of the sun or of astrology. So I'm going to tell you this. There are a few points to what they are calling astro-theology that do make sense because they are scientific. So it's these men like Jordan Maxwell that have taken science and they have intertwined it with their superstitious and occult religion, and they call it astro-theology. When they go to explain astro-theology to you, it's mainly there to try to convince everybody that a man like Jesus Christ never existed. That's the main reason they do that. That's the main reason they explain a little of what they know about astro-theology, but they do not explain it correctly. Astro-theology is pagan witchcraft. It is the religion of Wicca, and is what William Cooper described as the Mystery Babylon religion. Other people have called it a solar cult, and it is all of these things, and it is the basis of organized Judaism. It is the basis of organized Christianity, Roman Catholicism, the priests and the rabbis who brought you Judaism and Roman Catholicism and your Bible. I hate to say it, but they were all part of pagan witchcraft. They were all part of the mystery Babylon religion. They were all part of the solar cult. They were all part of Wicca. That is what Roman Catholicism and Judaism are. So if you watch films like Zeitgeist, and they are going to tell you that there are these ancient gods, like the Egyptian Horus, or the Greek Attis, or these gods from Palestine, the Middle East, and they all share these weird similarities. Usually, they were born from a virgin mother. They had 12 disciples. They were the light of the world. They're all of these ancient gods that share these similarities. And the truth is that it's because all of these religions, it all came from the same area of the Middle East and Egypt and Greece. That area has been an area of religious wars, going back into ancient times, going back thousands of years. If you try to figure out about all these different empires in that area, you will quickly find that there is a list of 100 different empires that controlled that area of the Middle East and Egypt and into Greece and that whole area. It was constantly one empire rising to power after the next. So it becomes very difficult to trace all of that. But all of that area is connected, and you could call it Babylon. It is the Egyptian Empire. It's Mesopotamia. It's the Roman Empire. It's the Greek Empire. Those are 4 or 5 big names. So I tried to trace which came first, and I quickly had a list of like 100 of them, because it is complete insanity in that area, and it all has to do with mind control and the religious occult. So later on, I will discuss more about religion, especially in that area concerning Palestine, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. But for now, I want to focus on astro-theology and tell you people the important thing, the important aspect of astro-theology that all these so-called occult researchers never managed to tell you, at least very well. And once again, astro-theology can be called pagan witchcraft. It could be called Wicca. It could be called a solar cult. And it can be called Mystery Babylon or the mystery schools. And it has to do with the solar calendar. And I discussed this in a very important video series called Wicca Exposed. So after you get done watching this, I highly recommend you check out Wicca Exposed. So let's go over some of the points, the introductory points to Jordan Maxwell's astro-theology. So it's almost like a comedy routine. These comparisons that people could come up with. Why do they call the Son of God the risen Savior? Because if it does not come up in the morning, we are all dead. Why does the Son have 12 disciples? Because 12 represents the signs of the zodiac. Why does Jesus Christ wear a crown of thorns? Because it symbolizes the sun rays. Same as the Statue of Liberty. It's just a symbol of the sun in the sky. How does Jesus Christ turn water into wine? The sun will shine on the earth, and when the rains or water comes, the sun will help turn that water into wine by growing grapes. How does Jesus Christ walk on the water, go down to the ocean, and look at the setting sun on the horizon, or see the sun's light reflecting on the water, and you will see how the sun walks on water. That is why Jesus Christ said, I am the light of the world, because the sun, the S-U-N in the sky, is literally the light of the world. And the last of Jordan Maxwell's points that I would like to bring up is that he says, when you go down to any church and you see the symbol of the cross with a circle behind it, that is not because anyone like Jesus Christ was ever crucified. All that symbol means is the sun. That circle, divided into 4 parts, represents the 4 seasons. That is the symbol for the solar calendar. And when they say the sun has died on the cross, all that means is that the sun goes through the 4 seasons and then dies in the winter. That is why they say the sun dies on the cross, because it's just a symbol of the solar calendar, and the sun symbolically dying in the winter and then springing back to life in the spring. So that is what Jordan Maxwell will tell you with his introduction to astro-theology. So that is what gets everybody's attention. It's almost like a stand-up routine. It's kind of like a funny word game. These comparisons that people could come up with. So I will finish with a quote from Jordan Maxwell. So that is the whole story. The sun going southward, dying on the cross, and being reborn on December 25th, when the sun moves 1 degree northward. Then it begins to spring back to life, as in the spring season. End quote. So all along, I thought these crosses were symbols for actual crucifixions. And all these historic records of the Roman Empire crucifying hundreds of thousands of people in the Middle East who they considered their enemies. They were considered rebels. They were considered civilians of the countries the Roman Empire was invading. So people like Jordan Maxwell will underplay that and say, no, that's not what this religion is all about. It's just about the Roman Empire and all these pagan religions examining the sun's position in the sky at different times in the year and observing that it stays a little longer in the sky during the spring and summer than it does in the fall and the winter. And that is what the Illuminati is really about. That is what Roman Catholicism is really about. That is what Judaism is really about. That is what pagan religions are really about. It's just about worshiping the seasons of the year. So I want to let you know the whole story behind these religious cults, from the pagan religions, through Judaism, through Roman Catholicism, through Christianity, is all about ritual sacrifice, the rape and the torture of their prisoners of war. That is their big secret. That is what they were all into. To them, that is better than going to a Friday the 13th slasher movie. Real life executions. That is what drives all the priests and rabbis and their inner groups of the different religious cults that have been called the Illuminati. That is the big secret that they are all into protecting. They are not into covering up that the sun appears to change position in the sky as the year goes on. The big secret is that they want to see pain and death. So that is what Jordan Maxwell, along with the people that brought you documentary films like Zeitgeist, do not want you to know about. Because my guess is that the people that brought you Zeitgeist, Jordan Maxwell, are all high-level secret society members who know the truth, if are not completely involved in these atrocities that these large religions and secret societies are trying to keep hidden and cover up. So they even have rap videos, Sick Sense, with his different rap songs, like the one called Astro-theology, to try to cover up the truth about what these secret societies are really into. So it's a whole campaign of lies to sidetrack people who are researching what these religious-based secret societies are really involved in. The big secret are these vile crimes that are being committed by them. The big secret is they practice vampirism, blood-drinking rituals. They practice cannibalism. They practice pedophilia. They practice the rape, the torture, and the mutilation of the people they choose to target. And usually, a lot of this is hidden in war. You just hear of 1,000 casualties. You don't hear about these military secret society members abducting families and kids and bringing them out to the middle of nowhere so they could rape and torture them for weeks or for months before finally deciding to kill them in the most terrible ways that you could imagine, because these people are demons. They are not like you or I. They are demons. So in the film Zeitgeist, they'll tell you the same type of stuff that Jordan Maxwell will tell you about astro-theology. They'll tell you that Jesus Christ is just a symbol for the sun. And they'll also tell you that these things attributed to Jesus Christ, like having a virgin mother, having 12 disciples, being crucified and then resurrected, are not even original to Jesus Christ. In fact, those are the same stories that are taken from other people considered gods, like Horus from Egypt or Attis from Greece. And when you look into those stories, you will see that Horus and Attis too are just symbols for the sun. So these secret society members, these priests and these rabbis, these pagans and these Satanists, they want to convince you that no one like Jesus Christ, no enlightened teacher like that has ever existed. There is no enlightened people that were ever attacked and crucified by this religious cult and secret society that wants to keep the rest of you ignorant and enslaved. When you hear stories around the world about enlightened people, they are all just metaphors for the sun in the sky. These secret societies want you to know that they have never heard of anybody enlightened try to stand up against them, or any attacks, or any crucifixions on these people. And they'll tell you the real story through liars like Jordan Maxwell and the creators of the Zeitgeist documentary, and through rappers like Sick Sense. So these guys will tell you that Attis from Greece was just a symbol of the sun, going through the 4 seasons and then dying in winter. So I'm going to read to you the real story of the worship of Attis from a book called The Golden Bough, written by Sir James G. Fraser. On page 403, I will read the myth and ritual of Attis, another of those gods whose supposed death and resurrection struck such deep roots into the faith and ritual of Western Asia is Attis. Attis was said to have been a fair young shepherd or herdsman loved by Cybele, the mother of the gods, a great goddess of fertility who had her chief home in Phrygia. Some held that Attis was her son. His birth, like many other heroes, is said to have been miraculous. His mother was a virgin. 2 different accounts of the death of Attis were current. According to the one, he was killed by a boar, like Adonis. According to the other, he unmanned himself under a pine tree and bled to death on the spot. The latter is said to have been the local story told by the people of Pessinus, and the whole legend of which the story forms a part stamped with the character of rudeness and savagery that speaks strongly for its antiquity. Both tales were probably invented to explain certain customs observed by the worshippers, The story of the self-mutilation of Attis is clearly an attempt to account for the self-mutilation of his priests, who regularly castrated themselves upon entering the service of the goddess. So does everybody understand what that means? These were most likely homosexual priests that gave themselves a sex change, a primitive sex change. These priests could not stand being men, and so they cut off their male genitalia, and then they acted like women. And these type of people were attracted to men like Attis. I continue with the book. After his death, Attis is said to have been changed into a pine tree. Certainly the Romans were familiar with the Galli, the emasculated priests of Attis, before the close of the Republic. These unsexed beings, in their oriental costume, appear to have been a familiar sight in the streets of Rome, which they traversed in procession, carrying the image of the goddess and chanting their hymns to the music of cymbals and tambourines, flutes and horns, while the people, impressed by the fantastic show, flung alms to them in abundance and buried the image and its bearers under showers of roses. A further step was taken by the Emperor Claudius when he incorporated the Phrygian worship of the sacred tree, and with it, probably the orgiastic rites of Attis in the established religion of Rome. The great spring festival of Cybele and Attis is best known to us in the form in which it was celebrated at Rome. On the 22nd day of March, a pine tree was cut in the woods and brought into the sanctuary of Cybele, where it was treated as a great divinity. The duty of carrying the sacred tree was entrusted to a guild of tree bearers. The trunk was swathed like a corpse, with woolen bands, and decked with wreaths of violets, for violets were said to have sprung from the blood of Attis, as roses from the blood of Adonis. And the effigy of a young man, doubtless Attis himself, was tied to the middle of the stem. On the second day of the festival, the 23rd of March, the chief ceremony seems to have been a blowing of trumpets. On the third day, the 24th of March, was known as the Day of Blood. The high priest drew blood from his arms and presented it as an offering. Nor was he alone in making this bloody sacrifice. Stirred by the wild, barbaric music of clashing cymbals, rumbling drums, droning horns, and screaming flutes, the inferior clergy whirled about in the dance with waggling heads and streaming hair, until wrapped into a frenzy of excitement and insensible to pain, they gashed their bodies or slashed them with knives in order to bespatter the altar and the sacred tree with blood. Wrought up to the highest pitch of religious excitement, they dashed the severed portions of themselves against the image of the cruel goddess. These broken instruments of fertility were afterwards reverently wrapped up and buried in the earth or in subterranean chambers sacred to Cybele, where, like the offering of blood, they may have been deemed instrumental in recalling Attis to life. So to stop reading there, what they are saying is that they tied somebody to a tree and then they started playing a bunch of loud music to probably drone out any of the screams or cries that might come from these priests attacking somebody who is tied to a tree. So they start cutting at this person's arms so that he is bleeding, and then they take his blood and present it as an offering. So it sounds to me like they are drinking his blood. And the reason they do this is because after beating and scaring somebody, their blood becomes filled with adrenaline. So after scaring somebody almost to death and mutilating them and cutting them, their adrenaline pours into their blood, which is then consumed as a drug. So these priests, these eunuch priests, are drunk on the blood of prophets and saints. They literally get drunk or high off of the blood that comes from their torture and execution victims. If there is any truth in this conjectural explanation of the custom, we could readily understand why the other Asiatic goddesses of fertility were served in like manner by eunuch priests. These feminine deities were served in like manner by eunuch priests. These feminine deities required to receive from their male ministers, who personated the divine lovers, the means of discharging their beneficent functions. They had themselves to be impregnated by the life-giving energy before they could transmit it to the world. Goddesses thus ministered to the eunuch priests were the great Artemis of Ephesus. I can't pronounce half of these names here. The great Syrian Astarte of Hierapolis, whose sanctuary, frequented by swarms of pilgrims and enriched by the offerings of Assyria and Babylonia, of Arabia and Phoenicia, was perhaps in the days of its glory the most popular in the East. Now, the unsexed priests of this Syrian goddess resembled those of Cybele so closely that some people took them to be the same. So these priests resembled the goddess so much that people would think that these priests were really women. So these priests were one hell of a cross-dresser. They were men in drag, and they were so feminine that people mistook them for being women. And these are the people who are into stalking guys like Attis or Adonis, tying him to a tree, probably raping him to be one with their god. And then they beat him to the point that he is probably insane with fear. Then they will cut him and drain his blood so they could then drink his blood that is filled with adrenaline so that they could then get high off of his blood. So I doubt that these priests are cutting themselves, because even the writers of the Golden Bough are not going to tell you everything about these illegal and ancient rituals concerning rape and torture and blood drinking. So the grand finale is that these priests will then castrate Attis, or whoever they choose to play the role as Attis, which is probably any good guy that they choose to attack. So while flutes played and drums beat, and the eunuch priests slashed with knives, the religious excitement gradually spread like a wave through the crowds. For man after man, his veins throbbing with the music, his eyes fascinated by the sight of streaming blood, flung his garments from him, leaped forth with a shout, and seizing one of the swords, which stood ready for this purpose, castrated himself on the spot. Then he ran through the city, holding the bloody pieces in his hand, till he threw them into one of the houses which he passed in his mad career. The household thus honored had to furnish him with a suit of female attire and female ornaments, which he wore for the rest of his life. So indeed the story that Attis unmanned himself under a pine tree was clearly devised to explain why his priest did the same beside the sacred violet wreath tree at his festival. So my guess is that the grand finale to this torture and blood-drinking ritual is to then castrate their victim, who is tied to the tree and is playing the role of Attis. So this is what the religious cults and the secret societies are really trying to cover up. This is what the worship of Attis is really about. The worship of Attis isn't about a metaphor for the sun in the sky and it changing position in the sky as the seasons go on. These religious rites have to do with the most obscene acts on the face of the earth, the most disgusting and cruel things that these priests and rabbis and secret society members can do to people is what they're trying to cover up. So this is what they're trying to cover up. When you hear about Illuminati rituals or these satanic or pagan rituals and where they cut pentagrams on people's chests and drain their blood to drink, this process goes back into ancient times all over the world where these very evil people are attacking good people all under the guise of their religion. They believe their religion, they believe their God gives them the right to do this to other people. This is a big practice in militaries. You raise up a group of kids in houses where they are deprived and abused, and then you send them into a foreign land and give them permission to attack or rape anybody they want to. They will happily go along with it. And if you tell them that they are the chosen people, and if you tell them that it is their religious right to do this, that they are ordained by God to do this, you have a group of people that love taking part in this. They have their governments or their military's clearance to do this. They have God's permission to do this. They are never going to go back on this. This is what they love to do. This is their life. They are addicted to abducting people, raping people, torturing people, and they are addicted to drinking their adrenaline-laced blood. It doesn't get any better for these religious and military psychotics to do this to people. They have a military clearance to do this. They think they have a religious right to do this. That is why they say it is their religious rights to do these secret rituals. And then when you try to investigate paganism, Satanism, the Illuminati, secret societies, and their takeover of militaries, their takeover of governments, their takeover of everything, you're going to get people like Jordan Maxwell and the producers of Zeitgeist that will tell you the only thing that they're trying to cover up is the fact that the sun appears to change its position in the sky as the year goes on. Alright, so at this point, I want to go back to the subject of Jordan Maxwell. So I have another channel on YouTube, and it is called Bulletproof Cyrus 13. And it has a video series on it called The Program. And then the second part is called The War. So I do not want to repeat a lot of information that was already presented on that video series. But in December of 2012, they began to generate radio frequency energy fields around the area where I worked and lived. I was living at that time at my dad's house. So pretty quickly, the energy that they were using caused me a lot of pain and agitation. And they often do that to force you out of your house on the street. And then they begin their games. And these are the secret societies with military clearances. It's the secret societies that work hand in hand with the MK Ultra program in the US military. This is the reason that these people live. They all get to stalk whoever becomes the target. So they all get into their cars and they follow the target around. They drive back and forth if you're walking down the street. And the reason the military likes to take over a whole region is to aid in these games. And one of the games is they'll have somebody harass you on the street. Either they'll tailgate you with their car, or try to intimidate you, or cause an accident on the road. And then already knowing what your plans are that day, from hacking your computer, from listening to your phone calls, from monitoring you, they already know what your plans are going to be that day. So after harassing you on the road, or causing some problem with you on the street, that same person will then get behind a desk and check you into a hotel, or sell you tickets to get into a movie, or sit right next to you in that movie theater. They often use disguises to do that. So they will change their looks throughout the day and follow you throughout the day. And the whole inside joke to them, I guess, is that you do not recognize them, because sometimes you know them. They are your old friends. They are your old co-workers, and you cannot recognize them because they have a disguise on. So this is a big thrill for them. But nothing is more thrilling until the point where they sabotage your life. They're trying to get you fired from your job. They're trying to alienate you from other real people. If you have some real friends or family members that are not involved in the MK Ultra program, they will attempt to cause problems between you and those people so that you do not have a support network. And then one day, without anywhere to go and without a job, because the MK Ultra program and the Freemasons have sabotaged that, you were sitting on a park bench late at night, and then it's real easy for these secret societies, these gangs of military personnel, to dress up like a gang and attack you, and then they could drag you off and abduct you and do even worse things to you. And that is what these secret societies are all about. So at the end of 2012, I think it was November or December, it was probably the beginning of December of 2012, and I was placed into a state of agitation. If you ever turn on a bass woofer and everything looks like it's vibrating, that is what it seems to be. And what accompanies this energy that is being projected at you is extreme agitation and pain. So the normal human response is to walk away. It's an attempt to get away from something that is causing you pain. So oftentimes, people will end up walking, and they'll end up walking for the whole day. So at that time, I was working at the Bartlett Arboretum, which is like a nature center in Stamford, Connecticut. At that time, work had slowed down at the Bartlett Arboretum because there wasn't as much work to do in the winter than in the other seasons. So I left work and I began to walk around downtown Stamford. The pain had made it that I did not want to stay at my dad's house, and they also used this energy system to harass me at work. So I left work and I began walking around downtown Stamford, Connecticut. And if I found somewhere to hang out, if I found a park bench to sit on in a park, it wouldn't take them 30 seconds or a minute before they'll send somebody over and to attempt to annoy me. Someone would sit right next to me, even though there were other empty benches in the park, and begin to flip their newspaper. They would talk loud on their phone. They would begin to peel out on the street at the traffic light. Every other car would peel out when the red light turned green. So they made it seem that I couldn't even find a bench at a park to sit at before some sort of minor harassment would begin in that area. So it seems like a little thing. It seems like almost nothing when you explain it, unless you understand what it means to be targeted by these energy systems. This energy makes you feel like you are going to die at times. There is nothing as painful as what they could do with these energy systems. So that is why they harass the target while they are going through this, because they know that will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So I do not know Stamford, Connecticut too well. I do not know the street names too well. But I was walking all over that city, and I got to a road, and I guess it was a residential road. It had mostly houses on it. So as I was walking down the sidewalk, and I went to cross the street, I stopped and turned and looked both ways down the street, and a truck pulled up, and it was either an SUV or a mini pickup truck with the cover over the bed. It was either a gray or black colored truck. So this person drives up, and he comes to a complete stop, and he waves for me to walk in front of his truck. So I look at him, and he looks exactly like Jordan Maxwell. And at that time, I remember thinking that might be Jordan Maxwell, but I found it a little odd that he would come to a full stop in the middle of this road when I kind of turned to step onto the road, because I still had to cross a lane to get to his side of the road. So there was no reason for him to come to a stop. So I looked at it as being a little suspicious, and I said, no, go ahead. I did not want to walk right in front of his truck because he seemed a little enthusiastic about stopping for any pedestrian walking along the side of the road. So it seemed a little odd, but I did get a good look at the driver, and that was Jordan Maxwell in Stamford in 2012. As soon as they started with this energy thing on me, he was right there to help monitor and harass me on the street, but he appeared like a good guy. So when I said, no, you go ahead, he shrugged his shoulders and then drove off. And Jordan Maxwell is the guy that gets up on the internet and warns everybody about secret societies and religious cults and government conspiracies. And this guy pops up in Stamford, Connecticut as soon as the military begins to harass me through the MK Ultra program. He is right there, as if he's not only heavily involved in this, but possibly overseeing it as well. So that is somebody who the government will trust in explaining secret societies, pagan religions, and government conspiracies to the people that are involved with these pagan religions and government conspiracies. So for a little while, I would think that the guys like Jordan Maxwell and Michael Tessarian, Santos Bonacci, and Alex Jones, and Nassim Harriman, and David Icke, they would be low-level guys in Freemasonry that were always maybe something like black sheep or kept on a low level of awareness when it comes to these conspiracies and the inner workings of their secret society. So I thought that those type of guys were low-level members of the intelligence community, and that they were chosen because they had little knowledge on the subject. But nothing is further from the truth. Those guys like Jordan Maxwell, Michael Tessarian, Santos Bonacci, David Icke, Alex Jones, and Nassim Harriman, they are high-level members of these different secret societies that take an active part in what they claim to expose on the internet. The U.S. military and the secret societies are not going to take a risk and let these guys go forward and try to inform the people about these conspiracies unless they knew that they were fully under their control, because they were high-level members of these groups. These secret societies have so much dirt on these guys that they have no concern whatsoever about them doing anything, but providing very little information, and for the most part, confusing their audiences. So that is Jordan Maxwell with the herds of Freemasons and MK Ultra agents and US soldiers all stalking me and harassing me on the streets of Stamford, Connecticut in December of 2012. So you can always tell that you're listening to these guys when they have very little information for you. And oftentimes, their information is a jumbling mess of loosely connected points. They kind of jump from subject to subject with all these different points of Illuminati trivia. So it becomes very hard to follow what they are saying. And that is done on purpose by these secret societies so that you do not learn anything. And if you try to explain any of this, you will have a hard time doing so. So a researcher, an activist who I recommend is a man named William Cooper. And if you are on YouTube, there is his Mystery Babylon series. And currently, I see that there is 43 parts to the Mystery Babylon series. And they're all about an hour long. So episode number 2 is called The Son of God. And William Cooper will explain the origins of religion. So what you will notice is that quite often the sun is chosen to symbolize large religions. Like the Roman Catholic Church, you will see a lot of sun symbolism. You will also see the sun symbol used throughout the pagan religions. Just do a search for the sun symbol or the symbol of the sun used in pagan religions, or used in Christianity, or used in Roman Catholicism. So William Cooper explained that the reason that is due to the fact that early humans, like cavemen, saw the sun as the first symbol of God. They worshiped the sun as God. When the sun appeared to go down at night, there was darkness. It got cold. You couldn't see anything. And when the sun came back in the morning, that was a good thing. So early man saw the sun as God. That was their first God. So the sun becomes a symbol for what gives life to the earth. So as a power move, when these religious cults were established, they all wanted to use the sun as a symbol, because that was a symbol for power. That was a subliminal message to the people that our religion is so good and so strong that we are like the sun. And later on, when you see the artwork done of Jesus Christ or the saints or the prophets, and they have what looks like a sun behind their head, that is usually a symbol of enlightenment, that they are enlightened, that they are very intelligent, they are very bright people. So what people do not understand is that these religious cults that have armies of priests and rabbis, and underneath them, their generals, their captains, their lieutenants, their soldiers, they want to be the light. They want to be the sun. They are the enlightened ones. They want people to do as they say. They're the group that should have the authority. And if you begin to research their groups, it is always like a hive mind. There is no individuals within this religious group. We are all the same. We have different ranks, but we are mostly the same. We all play our part for the group. We all represent the power of the group. And they say, well, what is your group really about? We're really a charity group. We're really a group that wants to teach you about Jesus Christ, or about the prophets, or about the saints. We are the cult of the prophet. We are the cult of Jesus Christ. We are the cult of Isis. We are the cult of El. we really like this Addis guy a lot. We like him so much. We are the cult of Addis. We really like this guy Jesus Christ a lot. We are the cult of Jesus Christ. So the big secret is that this cult always hated Addis. They always hated Isis. They always hated Mary. They always hated Jesus Christ because they were independent teachers. They were enlightened people. And they were regular people. And that Jesus Christ didn't have some big church that he wanted you to join and do exactly as he says. And all start giving donations to him. So the truth is that these cults, these religious cults, are just the heads of militaries. And when you ask them what they are about, they can't tell you death and destruction. And you do what we say. And you live like a slave or you die. They can't say that. So they say that we're about brotherhood and fraternity and charity and enlightening people and teaching people about Jesus Christ. But the truth is, these religious cults are doing the same exact thing as the Roman Empire and the Jews of ancient Palestine did to Jesus Christ. And the whole New Testament is filled with stories of these crowds of people that basically harass Jesus Christ and say you're not supposed to heal people on the Sabbath day because God said you should not work on the Sabbath. And so since you healed that guy on the Sabbath day, you are breaking God's law. Since you are teaching on the Sabbath day, you are breaking some law. So you are a criminal, and that is why we're stalking you and want to kill you. So that is the whole New Testament. He is stalked by this religious cult, and he is questioned over and over and over again by these people, by this cult of people that do not care that Jesus Christ is healing people. They do not care that Jesus Christ is teaching people. They are just following him around, trying to set him up for failure, trying to find fault in what he is doing. And eventually, they get Jesus Christ arrested. He gets tortured and then crucified. And that is what they were doing. The power establishment of ancient Palestine. They were arresting, torturing, and executing hundreds of thousands of people for being rebels, for standing up against the Roman military, occupying their lands. And if you look into it, you will find that these ancient religious cults in Palestine, these Jewish religious cults, were taking part in these human sacrifice rituals. That is the big secret for all these giant organized religions from whatever country they are coming from. The cult of Buddha from Asia, the cult of Krishna from India, the cult of whatever the Aztecs wanted to be called in Central America. That is what they do in these giant religious cults. That is what they're all into. That is the big secret. And by doing this, they want to take out people who are independent and intelligent, intellectual and individual-like people have always been the ones that do not like to go along with these military and religious cults. These military and religious cults have always had problems with guys like Jesus Christ. Little brain-dead idiots who like to believe the lies and the BS and all of the stupid teachings that come out of these organized religions. Those are the people they like to support. And you figure out, after looking into it, these little brain-dead idiots are really into their religious cult. Not because what is written in the different books. It's due to what's practiced in these religious cults concerning rape, torture, and murder. That is what really appeals to little brain-dead idiots. and to control freak psychotics. So what you have is these religious cults and these military cults killing off all the intelligence and strength from the human species and leaving behind only their legions of brain-dead idiots. So it is an attack on the human race itself. So I have been looking at some of these videos called Astro-theology. That is another game by these secret societies to throw researchers off the track of what is really happening inside the Illuminati or inside these religious military cults. And you will find some of the craziest, most idiotic things being taught by these groups that follow Astro-theology. And one of the biggest idiots that I've heard on the internet is a guy named Santos Bonacci. I have watched a few different of his documentaries, and I don't think he said one sensible thing in any of his documentaries that I've seen. So if Jordan Maxwell is a YouTube-sponsored schizophrenic, then Santos Bonacci is a YouTube-sponsored raving idiot. At times, it seems that he is going out of his way to sound like a raving idiot almost on purpose because he has no respect for anybody seriously researching these subjects. He's there to waste your time and mislead you. So we will cover a little more about Santos Bonacci in a little bit because he is another one of those guys who was part of a secret society connected to the US military, involved in stalking and harassing their targets. So we'll cover that in just a little while. But the best thing for you to do when researching the Illuminati is to read the different holy books. You know how they say things are hidden in plain sight? Hidden in plain sight means that they throw a Bible out in the middle of the table. It's right there in your face. You stay in a motel, in every room there's a copy of the Bible left on the bedstand table, and most people do not even bother to open that up, because when you do, it is a story about a satanic cult. In almost every book of the Bible that I've read, there are stories of satanic rituals, of trauma-based mind control, of incest, of demon possession, of wars, of these strange supernatural occurrences blamed on God's wrath or demons. If you want to investigate the Illuminati, if you want to investigate secret societies, it's all right there in your different holy books. Start with the Old Testament. Start by reading the Old Testament. So to give you an idea, I already read the book of Genesis, and I did a summary of it that you could find on this channel and the video series called Generations. So I already read and summarized the book of Genesis, but there's a lot more to read in the Old Testament. So I would recommend a lot of you researchers stop watching YouTube videos and start analyzing the different religious books like the Bible. Analyze the different Jewish books, because you're not going to find much on YouTube besides William Cooper and a couple of others. 99% of the people on YouTube are military Freemasons that are there to waste your time and sidetrack you. So I'm going to finish up discussing Astro-theology so that you stop taking people like Santos Bonacci seriously and Jordan Maxwell seriously when they are discussing Astro-theology. And you can start seeing through what they are saying